Welcome to this session on space plan annotation. So we're going to create a quick floor plan of our loft floor plate here and look at the annotation and also using filled spaces to color the plan. So I'm going to go up to my drawing production tab and we'll just create a quick floor plan here in the same file to demonstrate. So I'm going to come up and use the floor plan tool. We'll use the plan by floor. I'm going to set the seed to the arc floor plan, the default floor plan. We'll use our building floors and we'll come down and select the floor that we currently modeled, which was the loft floor 1. And for the view range, let's just use the drawing template. So it'll predefine where the cut and the back and the forward should be. And we'll make sure we've checked on create drawing, and then I'm just going to come over and left click in my top view. Go ahead and give that a name. We're just going to create this in the drawing model. I'll go ahead and create a sheet here as well, just so that we can see what it looks like. But we're going to create it all here in this model just for demonstration. We'll set our scale at 1/8 inch to a foot or 1 to 100 if you're in metric. Make sure our detail scale matches that. And we'll go ahead and select OK. We can see our marker here, and let's go ahead and open up that plan that we just created. I'm going to start by selecting the drawing and opening that. So here is our floor plan. You can see that that artifact has been replaced with an annotation label, and that annotation label can display whatever data we would like it to display. You just create your own annotation label. You can view the course on BIM Management 303, which is about customizing your dynamic views. And that covers creating that annotation label. But this particular label will show the label and the room number, as well as the programmed area and the actual area. And the rule that sets this up is actually using whatever is the default annotation label. If I were to change that default annotation label, which I do here, let's select my space, and we can see the label is space label 1. What that indicates is it's only showing as label 1. Notice that our letter, the A, B, and C is not showing because it's not part of this particular label. So if I were to change to space label 2, we're going to select OK and then apply that. We'll select OK. It will add in that second label. And we're just going to come up here and rebuild our annotation. And notice that now we see loft unit C, loft unit B, and loft unit A. So it's just a matter of which was our default annotation. Notice we can move these labels around. So for instance, my quarter label is overlapping. I can simply come in here, select move, and I could move that somewhere where it might fit better. If I don't want to see a label, for instance, maybe I don't need these labels on my stairs, I can simply right click on the label and say hide that annotation. Now, I also said we could color code these plans, and we would do that by opening up our reference presentation. We do that with this little icon over here. And on here, I'm going to go to the architectural tab. So this is where the rules are defined. So this is that space rule that's been turned on. Then I'll come down here and turn on filled spaces, and that's going to color in all our spaces based on the family part definition. So we'll select OK. Now this is a cached view, so I'm going to need to reload the cache to make that take effect. And now we have a colored drawing. Again, colors are based on the family and part symbolization. And if at some point I don't want to show the colors, I would just come back and turn off the filled spaces and reload again. So we now have our 2D plan. And finally, let's add an area tabulation table to our drawing. So I'm going to switch over to the Data Reporting tab and open the Schedules dialog. Now I've got my filter set to Show Used. That just filters down our list so we only see items which we're actually using. And of course, we're going to look at spaces. If I select the space type here, I just get a list of all the spaces and all the data that is on them. But if I expand that, you can see there's different layouts set up. So the layouts determine which properties go into the schedule. So for instance, there is a finished schedule layout, and so that would list all the data such as floor and wall finishes. We don't currently have much data, that type of data on the model, but eventually we might. But there's also space program layouts, so those would list basically the programmed or the actual areas, maybe ceiling height. And I actually have one set up here specifically for the loft modules. Now you might notice that just as we had the issue with the annotation labels, because they weren't showing label 2, we're not showing label 2 in our schedule layout here, so we can't see if that's A, B, or C. So let's go and make a few modifications to our schedule layout. So I'm going to select the Modify tab here, and I'm going to start here on the Properties tab. So on the left here is all the properties associated with spaces, and I could move any of those over into my actual schedule. So here is label 2, so we're just going to select it, and then we can move it over, and then from here I can actually move it up or down to the point where I want to insert it in my schedule. So we'll have the label 1 and then label 2. And then I've noticed here I've got the area program property. So that's the programmed area. I think what I really want in my table is the actual area, or possibly both. So I'm going to come over and select the actual area and move that over as well. And then we'll go ahead and move that up into our schedule. And then we've got the ceiling height and the occupancy type. Then we'll take a look at some of the other tabs here. For instance, we can set up filters. So a filter will filter through our spaces and only report on the spaces that meet a particular filter. So in this case, we really just want to create a table about the loft units. We don't want to include the corridor or the lobby or even the lounges at this point. And so I've set up a filter for the occupancy type as the property where it is equal to R2 residential multi non-transient. That's a property that we put on the loft spaces, and therefore they must meet that filter in order to be in the table. Then we'll go to the sorting and grouping tab. So this just, you can create different levels of sorting. So right now it's set to sort by the label. Of course, in this case, all of the label properties say loft unit. So I'm going to actually change that and select label 2 as my sorting property so that it's the A, B, or C value. And they'll sort ascending. And I've also clicked on here show item counts. So any units that are exactly the same where all the properties match up will just get listed in our table once, and we'll get a count for those. Next, I'll go to the Formatting tab. Now, the Formatting tab allows me to do some formatting on the property. So for instance, if we want to change the property heading, so in other words, maybe rather than say label, we would like this to say something else in our table heading. So for instance, I'm going to change this to unit, a little more descriptive for us. We can also change the justification, and in this case, I'm going to change that first label to be right justified. We could change the case. I'm going to leave the default. And then for label 2, again, I'm going to change the heading, and I'm just going to use a pound sign. I'm going to leave the justification left in this case, and again, the default case. Now, when it comes to areas, we could control the numeric format. In other words, again, I'll change the heading so it's just reword that and say programmed area. And because they're areas, I like to justify them right. If you were to sum them up, that would be the proper way. For accuracy, I'm just going to use 0. And then this working units, we're going to change this so you can put areas in either as text or as numeric. If it's something you want to eventually sum up, such as an area, you will want to change it to numeric. So we're going to set this to numeric master units. And we'll use the default for the display unit. So that's the display unit that we set up in our workspace preferences. I'm going to do the same with the area actual. Again, I'm just going to reword that. And we'll justify right. I'm going to set the accuracy to 0 and my working units to numeric master units. Now for ceiling height, that's just a height. Probably the heading is fine. I think I will justify that. And in this case, I'm just going to leave it as text. Since I'm working in feet and inches, then it'll come in as, for instance, 10 feet, 6 inches. So we'll just leave the default there. And there's no need to change the occupancy type. Maybe I'll take out that bar there. And if I go to the table tab, this just allows us to select a seed file for the table. I'm going to leave it at none, and a text style. The important thing here is we're going to leave on this retain association. That means that we'll have an association between the table and the data. So if the data on the spaces changes, or if an area changes, we'll simply refresh the table to update it. I'm going to select OK. We can see our data listed here. You'll notice if those actual areas weren't exactly the same, then it became a separate line item. So even though we think of loft unit A as being the same, they're not all exactly the same area because we have corner units that are just slightly different. And so those get listed separately. But the 4 that are the same get listed once, and we have a count of 4 on those. So let's go ahead and place this table. I'm going to use this place table icon here, pull down, and we're going to select from schedule. Just means what's ever actively selected in my schedule is what will get placed. These are the defaults that we set just a minute ago. So I'll select OK. I can see there on my cursor the table. I'm just going to come down here and place it below my plan. Go ahead and close the dialog there. And you can see the table placed there. So we do have our programmed area, but then we can also see the actual area. And there's our ceiling height. We can select that table and we can do a little bit of formatting. You can see my tools have changed up here across the ribbon. Gives me a few tools to format this. The one thing I'm going to do here is select column B and C between the 2 labels. And I'm just going to change the border there. So I'm going to come down here and toggle off the inside vertical there, and so that we don't have that line there. And so now we've got a quick table that represents the areas of our loft units. And we could continue to update our units and refresh the table and always have that current data. So now we're done with the loft units. In the next module, we're going to move down to the grocery store and look at some other approaches to space planning and also tracking assets.
If you found this video helpful, please give it a like. If you want to see more such series, consider subscribing to our channel. Thank you, and see you next time.